They slash them. Get it? Because it's a slasher? It's a horror slasher film written and directed by John Logan in his directorial debut. The film stars Theo Germain, Kevin Bacon, Anna Klumsky, among others. Now, I know this review may generate some controversy due to the subject matter, but worry not, for this is being reviewed by someone who happens to be part of the LGBTQ+ community. Anyway, let's get started. The premise of They Slash Them revolves around a non-binary protagonist named Jordan, played by Theo Germain, who is sent to a conversion therapy camp after making a deal with their strict religious parents that they wouldn't bother them about their identity again if they can go the full 2 weeks there. Well, once they get there, however, the false positivity from the overly joyous counselors is soon tarnished when the strict and sometimes very harsh treatments begin to happen. Some of these treatments include forcing them to sleep outside, forcing a character to kill a dog to make a man out of him, causing the poor guy to practically have a panic attack, giving someone ECT to zap the quote-unquote gay out of him, and telling all of them that they will always be nothing unless they, in their words, cut this nonsense. Things only get worse when a mysterious masked killer starts to silently stalk the camp, threatening the lives of those who are in it. Will the strength the campers bring when they're united be enough to get them through all this? This premise wasn't that bad. One of my few complaints about this is that the stuff involving the killer happened kind of late, and it really didn't focus too much on the figure to really build them up as an ominous threat. Yeah, they just stand there all menacing, but it didn't really give us too much of a reason as to why we should be afraid. From what I can recall, that's really one of the only times the killer is encountered by the campers, when he's standing there menacingly watching them. So it's kind of underwhelming because of that. It's one of the issues with the Haunting Hour episode Terrible Love. Brendan's deranged behavior should have happened a little earlier in that episode in order to truly build him up as a menacing villain. And while I will admit the treatments used on these poor people is hard to watch and might even get under your skin, one of the campers was sexually harassed and it was just straight up disturbing to watch. There are much more horrifying stories involving conversion therapy. Some of these include being denied food for days on end, sometimes taking them in the middle of the night in an unknown vehicle to the camp courtesy of their parents, and cruel physical punishment in some cases. But honestly, I feel like this is only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to all of this. In fact, that's why the scene with Jordan finding those pictures of all those kids horribly scarred from their treatments in one of the cabins was so terrifying, since not only did it remind me that this stuff actually does happen, but it also made me fear for the well-being of the characters as well. I give premise a C+. Not bad, but maybe could have been scarier in some areas. Next is acting. The acting in this was pretty good. This was my first time seeing Theo Germain in anything. Hopefully I'm saying their name right. And I really do think that they brought a really badass side to this character. They gave a kind of determination to them, like the scene when they first arrive at the camp. Just their actions and expressions alone tells you that they, as they should, do not have a good feeling about this place. The look of uncertainty as their character looks around is enough to remind you that not a lot of people have happy memories of this place. And Theo Germain shows that their character knows this. As usual, Kevin the Baconator does a phenomenal job as well in this, given that he really does make you loathe and fear his character because of how abusive he truly comes off. I also think it's fair to point out that he played an abusive character in Sleepers as well, and his character also in that film had a disturbing "I'm doing this for your own good" attitude, with the talk of discipline and whatnot, despite the cruelty and perversion his character would inflict. What's worse is that Kevin Bacon has an eerie calmness for a lot of his deliveries, and tries to come off as someone who doesn't care about what you call yourself or who you sleep with, despite doing everything he can to prevent them from doing those things. The calm is especially haunting during some of the treatment scenes due to the fact that he really does seem convinced that what he is doing is right. Now, as I might have mentioned previously, one of the female counselors sexually harasses one of the campers, and honestly, the way Heather Griffith delivered the scene made me feel very uncomfortable since not only did she talk lustfully to a young girl and talk about how delicious she looked and shit, but she said it all in a slightly sensible voice, which made me fear even more for the girl's safety. And the fear exhibit that Anna Laura exhibits after the whole encounter is genuinely scary, since it genuinely feels real. You can almost feel the horror she is feeling after all of that, and I feel her expressions alone were a big part of it. I give acting an A. Fantastic job. Finally, directing. While the stuff involving the masked killer could have been a little scarier, John Logan did create a very dreary mood throughout the camp, even without the killer. Even when the counselors were acting friendly, you could just tell that something was very off, because you know that the whole goal is to try to convert them away from their identities and away from who they are and whatnot. And while the stuff with the killer could have been scarier, the way John Logan demonstrated the horrors of these camps was surprisingly very effective. Yes, there are much more horrifying stories surrounding these places, as I've said, but the things that these poor people were put through was just so horrifying, not only for how cruel the treatments truly were and whatnot, but also because of how unfair it truly was. The whole purpose really is to change them. This is made clear when, during the ECT scene with Stu, they zap him every time they show him someone with masculine traits to shock the gay out of him, like I said. And while the film may have been scarier in some areas, I do think that it is overshadowed by the refreshing way that John develops these characters. He creates them in a way that makes you feel like you're actually becoming friends with them, and I feel that's shown by how much these characters are developed. They truly are formed in a way that makes it seem as though you've known them your whole life, since you get to learn so much about each one of them, and you learn some of their personal memories and insecurities. I give directing a B+, lacking horror in some areas, but still surprisingly eerie throughout and saved by the amazing diverse cast of characters. Overall, They/Them might not have been as scary as some expected, but I feel part of the horror also came from the treatments that were done at the camp. But even if it wasn't as frightening as some expected it to be, it still had some pretty good acting, anonymous tone, and some really fun characters. I sadly wouldn't recommend it as a slasher since it doesn't really focus too much on that. In fact, the beginning and end are the only times it really feels like a slasher. But I still would recommend it for the other things I mentioned, such as the characters, as well as the solid performances from all of the cast. I give They/Them a C+/B-. While I do feel it could have delivered more on being a slasher, I honestly don't think it's as bad as some people say. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and sub for more content.